Welcome back to the NFPT podcast, where we make you feel confident walking into your CPT exam. I am your host, Erin, General Manager of NFPT and a longtime certified personal trainer. Today, we have a sample question walkthrough on what to do when the low back arches during a squat assessment. So, this is a good one, and oftentimes people get these questions wrong. So, we will walk through the question. I'll read the question, then I'll read the answer options, and then we will go through it option by option to figure out what the correct answer would be. And this is a great way to practice for your CPT exam because it gets you in the habit of not just jumping to the correct answer, but really thinking through each of those answer options until you arrive at the best solution. All right, so here we go. The question is, during an overhead squat assessment, a client's back arches excessively. What is the best protocol? So, again, during an overhead squat assessment, a client's back arches excessively. What is the best protocol? Is it A, to strengthen the core with knee ups, B, to strengthen the lower back with cobras, C, to stretch and foam roll the upper back, or D, to stretch and foam roll the hip flexors? All right, let me read it to you again. And remember, a low back arched posture is also known as an anterior pelvic tilt. So let's go through it again. During an overhead squat assessment, a client's back arches excessively. What is the best protocol? Is it A, strengthen the core with knee ups? B, strengthen the lower back with cobras? C, stretch and foam roll the upper back? Or D, stretch and foam roll the hip flexors? Let's break it down. So, a protocol, when you see any kind of movement compensation in a squat assessment, is going to include stretching and foam rolling the overactive muscles or the tight muscles and strengthening the underactive or weak muscles. So, you can't come to the correct answer just by thinking it's only about stretching and foam rolling, because any kind of corrective protocol will have stretch and foam rolling and strengthening those opposing muscles. So, with answer option A, strengthening the core with knee ups, this could be plausible. This could be the correct answer. We're going to go back to it before we decide if it is correct or it is not correct. The second answer option is to strengthen the lower back with cobras. So, when we have a back arching, we know that what tends to happen is the core is typically underactive or weak, and the lower back is typically overactive. So you wouldn't want to be strengthening the lower back with cobras. That would only make the problem worse. So, right off the bat, we know that answer option B is not correct. For answer option C, stretch and foam roll the upper back. So, a client could have a tight upper back, but that is going to be demonstrated not by the arched lower back, but instead if the arms are falling forward or during a pushing assessment or a pulling assessment. So, answer option C is pretty easy to move on from because it's addressing the upper back, and that's not where we're seeing the movement compensation. Then we've got D, stretch and foam roll the hip flexors. All right, so as we went through these, we weeded out B. We don't want to strengthen the back with cobras. And we also weeded out C. We don't want to stretch and foam roll the upper back, although we could. That's not addressing this specifically. So instead, we've got answer option A and answer option D. And these are saying, okay, we think that the core is probably underactive, and we also think that the hip flexors are overactive. Both of those things are likely true. So you wouldn't want to panic on your exam. But instead, if we got it down to answer option A and D, next up, what we could do is we could look at the exercise. So with knee ups, what's happening is, well, yes, those are a core exercise, those are core exercises. It's also requiring the hip flexors to work too. And so while yes, we want to strengthen the core, knee ups probably aren't the best solution. We want to be doing more stabilization type of exercises for the core, things like forearm planks and bridges. That's going to be a lot more valuable in strengthening the core when you see a low back arching than knee ups would be. So answer option A is not the best answer. You wouldn't go completely wrong, but you would get it wrong on the exam. That means answer option D, to stretch and foam roll the hip flexors, would be the best answer for this question. And again, during overhead squat assessment, the client's back arches excessively. What is the best protocol? It's to stretch and foam roll the hip flexors. Now, let's talk a little bit more about what's going on when the back is arching. So, first of all, in a movement assessment, sometimes before the client even starts the movement assessment, they're already going to have an arched back, and that is a static posture assessment. And the movement assessment might make it worse, or it might just still be there. It might still be present. So, just because you don't see the visible motion happening during a movement assessment doesn't mean it's not there. So keep that in mind. And what we also know is, because this can trip people up, because sometimes it's referred to as an anterior pelvic tilt and students get confused, just remember an anterior pelvic tilt, just break it down. Anterior is the front of the pelvis or the hips, and that happens when the top of the hips tilt forward. So anterior means forward. So the top of the hips are tilting forward. The body moves in the direction of the overactive muscles. That means that we have overactive hip flexors. And when we have overactive hip flexors, what happens is the lower back oftentimes becomes collateral damage. So the lower back starts becoming overactive as well, because those hips are tilting forward. It's creating an arch in the back. And then we've got some overactivity going on with those muscles that run along the lower back. And then we also know that sometimes the lats can play a part in the overhead squat assessment when the back is arching because of where they connect. And so sometimes the lats will need to be addressed when you see the low back arching. But thankfully, we didn't have that as an answer option on this question. So we were able to answer it with confidence. All right, and that is it for your sample question walkthrough today. It was simple, right? That is what makes NFPT different. We are here to make sure that CPT success, passing your exam, and in the industry is not complicated. If you haven't already, enroll in your NFPT CPT today. I'll give you a coupon code to get 10% off. But if you're already enrolled in another CPT program, no worries. You can check out our recorded exam prep series. So that is meant to supplement any CPT exam. And regardless, if you use coupon code NFPT podcast 10, you will get 10% off either of those products, even if they're already discounted or on sale. So again, that coupon code is NFPT podcast 10 to get 10% off. That is it. Thank you for joining today. I'll catch you next time. Stay well and keep moving. Today's episode is brought to you by Summit Professional Education. Unlock your potential with Summit Professional Education, your trusted partner for expert-led courses, flexible learning, and essential CEUs. Elevate your skills today at summiteducation.com.